Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Hey, thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast. Welcome to our live Texans-Bears postgame show, now part of the Bleav network. And joining me is our new contributor, Tom Chavarria, co-host of the Bullpen podcast, covering Texans over there. And Tom, it is only fitting the Texans' first preseason game ends because of storms and lightning. That's the most Houston thing ever.
Mother Nature definitely has a sense of humor. They're like, what better way to tease the Texan fans with a game and then take it away with some rain? We've gotten our fair share and we're not done, but a great game.
Oh my goodness. It was at least we got some football. I do want to say that in baseball, it's like 5 innings before the game is official. How many quarters before it's an official loss in a preseason game, Tom? I mean, what is it? Do we get to 3 quarters? It's not officially lost if it's just 2.5 quarters.
I don't know. I don't necessarily take too much stock in who wins and who loses preseason games. We're looking at position battles and players. But yes, for someone somewhere, a bookie, something, I'm sure that win-loss mattered.
Oh yeah, you better know that. For everybody watching live, by the way, send us your questions and comments. We'll post them and react as we move along. And if you're relatively new to Houston Sports Talk, we go live after every Texans game. So make us a part of your Texans routine on game days. And Tom, it's weird to start the preseason with more backups than the third quarter of your average preseason games. I was just like, this doesn't feel quite right to me.
It was interesting. I mean, we knew the starters weren't going to play. We just didn't know how much of what position group we were going to get, whether it was going to be 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s. And I think towards the middle of the third quarter, you really start to see a drop off in production. There were some great moments early, but once we got to the bottom of the barrel, as they say, you could really tell.
By the way, this is it couldn't have been a better way to start the first preseason possession. 13 plays, 74-yard touchdown drive. Davis Mills and the offense in rhythm. Bobby Slowick and Davis Mills, it looked like we're really rolling there as far as in sync on what was going on. And Tegan Cotoriano, who unfortunately gets carted off the field later, a couple of catches and a touchdown, man.
That guy really just can't catch a break. It seems like he pops all the time until he gets hurt. And then we're left to wonder, when will we see him again? It's really tough because every time he looks like he could really perform, and we'll just have to see what that means for the tight end room. Obviously, Brevin Jordan was a little nicked up, so we didn't see him tonight. I thought Cade Stover looked good, though.
Yeah, we're going to get to some of the standouts, but the Texans' second possession, that wasn't bad either. 12 plays, 74 yards, a Fairbairn field goal. And unless I missed something, Tom, there weren't really any obvious O-line miscommunications the first couple of drives. And by the way, the starters, if you weren't paying super close attention, I don't know if they even mentioned those on the broadcast, but it was Fisher, Kenyon, Juice on the left side. That's no surprise. Chris Reed was at guard, which, I mean, whoever that is, and Nick Broker was at right tackle.
Yeah, I was struggling with some of the numbers and names too. I'm like, who is that guy? So I was trying to do my homework as well. You're right, though. A really good first couple drives. I think Bobby Slowick looked really sharp, had those guys really ready to go, and they're really crisp. I was pleasantly surprised to see how decisive the offense was, and it wasn't like the old, Texans of 2 years ago where it was like run on first down, run on second down, pass on third down. They really mixed it up well.
The defense had a chance to make a big play after the Texans scored the field goal, but then third-round pick Calen Bullock, after forcing the fumble, didn't get much help from Mike Ford, who whiffs on his chance to recover it. He was that offseason pickup, maybe just a guy in camp. I don't know what he is quite yet. But, Tom, it was up and down for Bullock because on the next play, he nearly gives up a big catch, but the wide receiver, luckily for him, dropped the pass.
I think truly rookie stuff, right? Highs and lows, valleys, chasms, the whole nine. So I love what I saw from Calen Bullock. I think the stuff is there for him to be great. We just obviously got to clean up some of the mistakes, really tighten up some of the things. And I think he'll be a great addition to this team.
The Texans ended up giving up a touchdown on an 80-yard drive. Looked like a bunch of confusion in the secondary. Tom, 2 veteran DBs got caught staring, Desmond King and Jacob Phillips. And really, I'm waiting to look at the numbers, and I'm thinking, this is just going to be young guys, rookies, somebody who hadn't been in the league that long. And it's like, what, these guys get totally like, I mean, did you see that? Like 3 guys also stood there staring as the, offensive guy ran right past them.
Yeah, I really wonder how much their heart was in it, knowing that the starters weren't playing. You talked about Desmond King, a guy who's been in this league for a while. For him to go out there and look a little lost made me think that he was kind of just going through the motions and wasn't really locked into the game. I'm not going to hold that against him until I see it again. I'd hope that with better guys around him, a better supporting cast, he would play better. So that's the way I'm going to approach it. Hopefully that we don't talk about him again the rest of the offseason negatively. So we'll have to see.
Anything else strike you so far? I've got about a quarter and a half into it. Is anybody else that, really caught your eye?
I mean, I gotta go back to Davis Mills. With a guy like that, a lot of people were talking about, him potentially being moved. And I know there are teams, Justin Herbert, he just went down with a foot thing. There are going to be teams that are going to be hurting for a quarterback. And I'm curious if this good play might get the phone ringing for Nick Caserio for a guy like him. I really was really interested in the running back rotation. I don't know if you were going to get to that or not, but the running back rotation was really wild to me. I did not expect it to go the way it did. I thought we were going to see Jawar Jordan a whole lot sooner than we did. Just a really interesting mix.
Ogunbowale is what? Second string, third string? That was very strange.
I mean, if it's just, getting some guys some run, I get it. I think a lot of people, would feel that Ogunbowale would be a guy that would be a special teamer only if he was going to make this club, not necessarily running back. I definitely feel like with the performance Cam Akers put on tape, he's going to be fighting hard for that last running back spot, depending on how many running backs they decide to carry.
Was there anybody on the offensive line, or could you focus much on those guys? I mean, was there anybody that you thought stumbled at all, or anybody that stood out? The second, once you get past the first set of guys, I just it was hard for me to care because this was really like the guys that were the second team at best that were starting. So beyond that, you're like, well, most of these guys we're never going to see again anyway.
I couldn't agree more. I really didn't focus too much on the line, which I probably should have. My big focus was on the wide receiver group. I was really interested into who they were going to lean into. I wanted to see Metchie have a great game because all through training camp, we've talked about John Metchie being the guy that's ascending. This is his time. And it was Xavier Hutchinson that made a lot of big plays in those first two drives. And for me, I'm just kind of like, where's John Metchie? Where's John Metchie? So my focus was a little there, but I mean, they were able to do enough on the offensive line. And like you said, we hope we don't see those guys.
I'm going to get back to the game in just a second, but one of the things we haven't hit yet, and I'm just kind of curious what you think. What about those new Texans jerseys, seeing them in an actual game? Was your world rocked or changed by those jerseys, seeing them live and in person, like on a game?
I got to be honest. I thought they looked great on a mannequin. I thought they looked great in person, live, on the TV screen. I think this uniform change was something that was sorely needed. I think we kind of like worn out the original uniforms, really. And I'm really excited to see the red ones. We saw a glimpse of that. So I'm a big fan of the new uniforms. Not a big fan of the H, though. The Old English thing never really sat well with me. It's growing on me. But if there's any knock that I got on the new uniform, it's got to be the Old English H.
Yeah, it looks a little too, I said at the time, it looks a little too Titans-y with the color scheme, and that H, I guess the font was reminding me a little bit of the Titans. Did you get that same feel?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Especially in that alternate uniform where it's like the blue and then the Texans blue or the Columbia blue or whatever you want to call that color.
Yeah, speaking of the old Oilers, really love the drop by Joe Buck of Mojo, and they actually had the video ready to go. His team was ready. He must have warned them on that. So some good production by the guys there. And also, Joe Buck, it's his one saving grace for me. He grew up a Houston Oilers fan, and that's pretty cool for a guy that, whose dad was a St. Louis Cardinals broadcaster.
You know what? When he said that, I'm not a huge Joe Buck fan because I feel like he's got a little bias towards my Astros. But when he said that, I was kind of surprised. I was like, really? An Oiler fan? Okay. He won a couple brownie points back from me, but I wouldn't go further than that.
Hey, just want to remind everybody to look for our Andre Johnson tribute on our YouTube channel. Great interview during the game with Andre. Here's some fun stories from Andre's teammates in that tribute and Texans media, if you haven't caught that yet. One of my favorite shows that we put out in the last few months. And we just compiled from our Houston Sports Talk interviews over the years, all the best stuff. So go check it out. Now, Tom, the Texans' third drive ends on a John Metchie drop pass. Metchie's had moments in camp, but the word is he's also had some drops too.
I saw it. I was a little disappointed. I thought it was a really tight coverage. I thought that was a really quick hitter. But he's going to have to make those if he's going to play in the slot. And for me, I hope he's given more opportunities in training camp to really try to be the wide receiver 4 or 5 or whatever. Because I don't feel like you're concerned about Xavier Hutchinson after tonight. I thought he shined. I think Ben Skoranek looked great. So I hope that means they give more attention to Metchie to try to get him right.
I see my nieces are in the comments. Thanks, girls. Love those girls. But come on, somebody, I need some Texans questions for me. Come on, bring us some Texans comments and questions. We want to hear from you. So late in the half, the Texans got their second touchdown. And Tom, you might as well call it the Cam Akers drive. You mentioned him earlier, a couple of big runs and the TD catch. Didn't look at all like he was coming off that second Achilles tendon injury, and just great news for him.
Yeah, it was a really surprising signing for me, knowing what they already had in the running back room when they brought Cam Akers in. And then obviously a known commodity, but with the injury history. So for him to come in and pretty much kind of dispel any issues with the Achilles, he looked good. He had one run where he really put his foot in the ground and cut and had like 8 yards on the play. So, and then the spin move on the catch, that he was kind of the relief valve. I really thought Cam Akers showed a lot of versatility, showed you why he could be definitely RB3 for this team, and just a valuable piece that was on the street. When I watched the game, I could not understand how he was not a member of any running back room up until 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, it is weird because Ogunbowale getting the start, you feel like, okay, if they think that much of him, they may feel like he's going to make the team instead of Jawar Jordan. And you're wondering, like, where does that leave him? I mean, it's a late round pick. So, it's a guy that you can afford to maybe try to put on the practice squad. But I mean, do you see him, do they bring 4 running backs into the season? Do they do something with I just don't see that there's a place for him at this point. If he's not back there in kickoff, action. I mean, I didn't see him, catching kickoffs either. So that's, to me, that'd be a real, I would be worried if I were Jawar Jordan right now.
I really believe like they're going to carry a 4th running back because of the versatility that Dameon Pierce and Dario Ogunbowale provide in the special teams game, whether it be coverage or receiving kicks in the version of Dameon Pierce. So it's really good to see Cam Akers kind of like accelerate into this role. Obviously, I think it's going to be a position battle that probably will go on throughout camp. But I hope that they're able to hold on to Jawar Jordan if for some reason he doesn't make the roster, because the talk coming out of the draft was that was kind of a steal a little bit. Like he should have went a little higher. But it's a good problem to have. Better to have too much than not enough.
Yeah, I need to see if Jawar Jordan is too much, though. I mean, there just wasn't enough to really for me to get the gauge if he was anything close to an NFL running back, especially, he's not just playing at the end of the game, but he's playing at the end of a game where the end of the game guys were playing in the first half. So that makes it really hard to judge him. And you really have to excel at that point. Next up, I just want to hit when the Bears go down the field at the end of the half, they get 2 huge chunk plays. One of those, great catch by Colin Johnson, despite fantastic coverage by Mike Ford. He couldn't do anything about that one, but the TD looked like blown coverage. Lonnie Johnson was the closest to the play. Don't know what you saw in that, Tom, but that's the other thing. I didn't notice any highlight plays by the defense. The Calen Bullock thing in the first half and early in the third quarter was the only thing close to something that, that was kind of interesting, or that means something.
Yeah, for me, I was really focusing in on the pass rush. I was hoping that some of those guys would get home, and they just never really did. And I definitely believe that the touchdown you're referring to was a blown coverage. Lonnie Johnson probably should have been there and wasn't. So hopefully that's something that is a coachable moment for a lot of those guys. Obviously, with playing the backups, you're probably going to have guys out of position, guys that weren't playing with each other. So there's probably some of that there too, where it's just communication and detail and stuff like that. But for me, it's hard for me to really gauge the 3rd string, 4th string guys fairly, because I just don't know. I mean, obviously in training camp, you don't see a ton of them, right? So then you just don't know what they're going to look like under the bright lights. I really hope that, as the training camp, as preseason progresses, we see better performances out of those guys.
So I don't know where I should go with the player of the game. It could be Davis Mills. You could say Cam Akers. I sort of lean towards a guy that is fighting for a spot in this crowded receiving corps. Xavier Hutchinson. How about his first half? Yeah, he dropped that ball early, but after that, 5 catches, 56 yards, the 20-yard run, 8-yard run, but he also had the 20-yard pass play. Xavier Hutchinson looked pretty good and pretty comfortable out there. And, with him and John Metchie, I feel like both of those guys might be fighting for a spot. It could be Noah Woods that's, fighting for a spot. It's hard to say, but it was good for Xavier.
I totally agree. Xavier Hutchinson, reminds me of the Deebo Samuel. It reminds me of him in that sort of setting because the offensive coordinator came from San Francisco, where you have the guy that runs the jet sweep. You have the guy that runs some of those similar routes. It feels like his body type is the exact same to Deebo Samuel. So I feel like in a Bobby Slowick offense, there's always going to be a position, a role for a guy like that. And if Xavier can be that dude, obviously we saw it in this game, there's going to be opportunity for someone like that. So it's going to be interesting to see going forward once you start bringing in the ones, if they keep feeding Xavier Hutchinson, if this was, this is what I have to work with, so I'm going to use them. In any case, I think he had a great game, and I really feel like there's just so much talent in that wide receiver room right now. It's going to be really tough. I think somebody really good is not going to be on this team at the end of preseason. I'm sorry.
Oh, of course. I don't think there's any question. If they're lucky, they can strike some sort of deal to send Noah Woods somewhere else, because actually he makes quite a bit of money, considering I think he's like maybe the 3rd or 4th highest paid Texan, which is really bizarre. But also, a guy that he looked pretty good too, and he gets lost in the shuffle. They pick him up in the offseason. Ben Skoranek, great catch in the middle of the field on that deep throw by Davis Mills. Mills, you could say he threw it too high. Maybe that was the only place he could throw it, but Skoranek goes up there and gets it. And this is somebody I'm excited about because he's just one of those X factors. You can do all sorts of stuff with him. The Patriots always had one of those guys. Caserio tried to bring in a couple of guys that maybe he thought were like Patriot type guys in the first couple of years he was the general manager. This looks like one of those that we're talking about, like somebody that you could throw around, do all sorts of things for you out on the field. And, I really like what I saw.
Ben Skoranek screams Patriot way, like you just spoke to. A guy you can line up at fullback who can actually go out and block somebody, famously blocking J.J. Watt right before he retired. I really feel like Ben Skoranek, if he can keep putting good tape for these guys, preseason game after preseason game, he's just got to have a place on this team because the versatility, in the same manner we think about Dario Bungawale having the versatility of being able to play in the running game and play in special teams. I really feel like Ben Skoranek being able to block as well as be a receiving weapon out of the backfield in the slot, wherever you want to put him, it's just another weapon that the Texans can use.
Yeah, good stuff from T4 Trouble, who says that catch was not easy to secure and bring down. I mean, that's an incredible catch. Speaking of incredible catches, oh my goodness, ex-Longhorn Colin Johnson, just with we talked about the catch earlier, nearly had another one. The Texans did a good job of challenging it, getting it overturned, but still, the fact that he was that close to making that catch was pretty good. And then he badly beats Chris Boyd, who's probably just a camp body anyway for that touchdown. Just 5th round pick from a few years ago, former Longhorn. If you're a Longhorn fan, I'm sure you love seeing him succeed and in a big moment for him, new team and everything.
The funny thing is at UT, because I do follow the Longhorns, he was the most sure-handed guy on the team. And while he didn't have the flashy speed or anything like that, he was a big body that would, just like this evening, go up and get a ball. So for him, and I Bleav, I can't remember his first name, but Rippon, they just had chemistry like they've been doing this for a while, because the ball that he dropped, he had made a catch like that prior to that. And he just had a huge night. I think that was probably player of the game from both teams.
All right. Now, aside from just the action on the field, one of the things that really caught my ear was that Will Anderson interviewed during the game. And his answer to a question was why I love this kid. I mean, Lisa Salters asked about his personal goals this year. And Tom, he said, I'm just working on being a great leader, and then sort of expounded on what he was talking about, what he wants to do. I mean, this sounds like a guy that's been in the league for a dozen years. Who says stuff like this? Who does this? This is awesome.
When you listen to him and when you listen to CJ Stroud and you just think about the fact that they have these two guys in their locker room and this is year 2, I never want to see them play in any other uniform, either of them in any other uniform other than the Houston Texans. Both of them just say all the right things. They do all the right things. They're so grounded. I mean, he expanded on what you were talking about and said, look, if I'm a good leader, all the other stuff will come. That's fine. I just need to be a good teammate in the locker room, do all the things. And for a guy that has all the praise that Will Anderson Jr. has already got, it would be so easy for his head to get big. And, but he just seems so humble, just like CJ Stroud, just so humble, hardworking, head down. They were as involved on the sideline when the cameras panned over to them as anybody that was playing in the game. When Cam Akers makes this huge play, CJ's like doing backflips on the sideline. Like, I love both of those guys so much, and I hope they never play anywhere but Houston.
Yeah, and I remember when the draft choice was made, me and Sean Bajani, who were doing the show right after that draft, when they took Will Anderson and they made that trade, I specifically remember saying, hey, they just didn't trade for this guy because of his talent. The reason why they put all this capital into him is they feel like this guy is going to be a tone setter and a leader on defense. That was what they were talking about with him coming out of Alabama. That's what the people that covered that program would tell you. Will Anderson had this in him. And I mean, they talked about it on the broadcast tonight. ESPN did. I can't remember if it was during the game or during the rain delay, but they were saying, look, I mean, Will Anderson, to get a guy like that and CJ Stroud in the same draft, two leaders on both sides of the football. And we've talked about that this past week. Now everybody's talking about it. Like, what the Texans did was a huge coup. And just, I mean, you talk about we know this, it changed the entire, just the way everybody sees the Texans. And, Will Anderson, even more so sometimes than CJ Stroud, when he talks, I'm just fascinated to listen to him because, he sounds like a guy, like I said, it's been around for 20 years. He sounds like he's lived like 3 or 4 other lifetimes. He's one of those guys that you go, man, there's no way you can be, what are you, 22? It's not possible. And we talk about these Rockets guys that are 20, 21, 22, and you're like, well, they just got to mature and they've got to, you can hear it in the interview. They're not quite, they're not quite men yet or whatever. And I'm like, Will Anderson, that guy came in as a man.
And you know what's crazy and what is so satisfying as a Texan fan? When that trade was made, when that pick was selected, national media crucified the Texans for it. Horrible pick. They're trading away probably the number 1 pick in the draft next year. This was awful. That guy needs to be like Hall of Fame great for that pick to make any sense. And now you fast forward a year and no one's questioning that pick.
Yeah, it's so good, so good. And just, this game, it was a little like wet your taste type game. And I say wet in a non-pun way, but it's sort of like it is a pun, I guess. But it was sort of like wet your taste for some football, which was cool. But man, I want to see some more of the guys out there. I felt like I got an appetizer, not really a full meal, Tom.
You got the appetizer and then the check. You're still starving. You're like, all right, we're closing. Be back next week. Yeah, it's so exciting. I mean, just the small sample size that we have, it just makes you want the rest of the team so bad. It makes you want to see all these pieces come together. I thought that it was a great game from the aspect that no major injuries. Obviously, we're worried about Teagan. We hope that's squared away. But by and large, a lot of the team came back intact. And next week, they should be able to show us a little bit more of what they have in store.
I said a couple of weeks ago, I'm like, yeah, I want to see this new and improved Kenyon Green, the man body, the healthy Kenyon Green, all of that sort of stuff. but I didn't want to see him against a bunch of Bears that were not probably ever going to be on the roster. I mean, some of these guys I assume that he was facing just weren't something, but at the same point, it's just good to see him take care of business. I mean, it seemed like the O-line took care of business, did what they needed to do. And really that was to me, nothing was more important than seeing what this offensive line does, seeing if they had some chemistry, because the reports that I heard over and over again in practice, Tom, were just that they weren't looking real sharp. Let's put it that way. They kind of looked confused. There was some stuff that they weren't getting straight. Obviously Tunsil not playing right now. They're kind of letting him not play because of the injury and stuff like that, but still, you're like, well, most of these guys, they're going to be on the starting unit, and we got to be able to afford to not have Laremy Tunsil out there. But at the same time, they're going up against Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson, and that's kind of cool too.
Iron sharpens iron. That's the saying that they've been using, and I think it's really true, especially with these two sides of the football. I feel like that defense is only going to make CJ better, and I feel like CJ is only going to make that defense better. Same thing with the DBs and the wide receivers, like T for Trouble's talking about. It's a packed room. So when you see these DBs in this game, you're going, okay, they're going up against Stephon Diggs, they're going up against Tank, they're going up against Nico. So I think it's great. I'm really excited for the season just to get here like tomorrow. I think all of those guys, they look like they're ready to go. I really feel like you could start it tomorrow.
If you're a fan of the show, if you listen on the audio side, hey, we need you live on the Texans post-game shows. We want to hear from you. Just really one commenter, and I know we got some more fans out there. I would hope we've got more Texans fans out there. Come on, guys. This is it. It's showtime, baby. Hey, Tom, final words, any last thoughts before we wrap things up?
Yeah, really excited. As I'm sure you can all tell, we need all the football. Can't wait for all the other games. This is the start. Hopefully, we have stuff to build on, plenty to talk about. I'm looking forward to a great season.
All right. Sounds great. We will talk to you guys again next week. Don't forget, always go back in the archives. Look for those Houston Sports Talk history archive stuff, because we've got playlists with, Astros and Rockets and just the full-on Houston sports history playlist with over 200 shows with different players and media people that have, the legends that have voiced the Houston sports over the years also. So go check through that stuff, and can't wait to talk some more Texans next week. Tom will be back with us on the next Texans live show, and me and Steven doing the regular stuff next Tuesday. Looking forward to it, guys. Texans, not a win, but it's not really a loss. I mean, it's like 2.5 quarters. Does this count? No, it doesn't count. So thanks, everybody. Talk to you again soon.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, don't forget to support us by subscribing and commenting on YouTube. You can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about us and share our show links on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.